Hey, good morning to those of you out on the West Coast. Good afternoon to those of you here with me on the East Coast. I'm excited today to talk about federal sales made easy. Stop using Shipley is the title that I do there. And I'm serious about stopping using Shipley if you're at a certain stage. Um, Shipley's a good thing for a certain stage. I'm going to talk about that today, but I'm excited to talk about how you can look at some of the things you're trying to accomplish from a different angle, and you'll see progress much faster than if you try to use billion-dollar tools. So we'll get to that in a minute in today's training. I just want to give you a couple of updates, by the way. First off, throw your company name in, your core competency. If you don't know this about LinkedIn, when you go live like this, and we've been going live 150 plus times now, when you go live and people engage in the comments, LinkedIn then says, hey, this looks like an event people are participating in, and they push the word out to other government contractors. This is really helpful for you, I believe, because then you're bringing more people into your community. That chat is your community. And when you bring more people in, you have a potential of meeting potential buyers or largest, but most likely and most helpful in my mind are other small businesses like you who are looking to go to the next level. And I get comments all the time, direct messages from people who say, hey, I had somebody who wrote a message saying, thank you for the community. I met 4 people. And while they were writing the message, they said, hey, I just got 2 more invites, right? Not all of them are going to turn into, $1 million sales, but all of them have the potential for new relationships, teammates for you. So definitely get engaged in there. It's a community. I wanted to give you a quick update on some stuff that's coming out next week. Just to give you a heads up, we're dropping our next release of the Small Business Directory. If you're not familiar with this is a directory of small business specialists, so not you small businesses, but small business specialists throughout the federal agencies. It contains over 1,000 names, numbers, and emails. And this thing's worth tens of thousands of dollars, right? I spent 20 years as a small business owner struggling constantly to find, the name, number, and email of people to call to get into agencies. And so I spent all this wasted time doing research when if the government just had a book like this, that would have helped me. And so that's why we at the GovCon Chamber don't charge for this thing, but it is tens of thousands of dollars in value. I spent years collecting all these names, and then I have my team gathering more. So track on that. Next week, we hopefully will drop it on November 1st because it is a November update. It's all done, but I'm actually just trying to throw in a couple of extra pages of value in there. So our plan is Tuesday. Watch out for that. That one is a great one for tracking on. Actually, if you want me to make sure you know about it, just put Small Business Directory, SB Directory, into the chat, and I'll make sure we send you an email, let you know it's ready. Okay, let me get started here. If you don't know who I am, my name is Neil McDonnell. I'm the president of the GovCon Chamber of Commerce, and I want to welcome you to my daily LinkedIn Live federal sales training where I teach process and procedures, tips for success in the federal market. I've been doing this since 1998 or something. I spent 20 years as a government contract small business owner. And then since 2018, I've been teaching people like you that government contracting is not a secret. It's just a process. When you follow a process, A to Z, you're going to have predictable results and repeatable predictable results over and over again. And I know that's what you want for your business. And that's what I'm looking to contribute in these trainings. And in particular today, diving into a holistic look at the process. Before we get too much farther, do me a favor. I already mentioned this, but put your company name, your core competency into the chat. Let people know who you are. Help buyers and me remember who you are. There's multiple companies where if I hear something here, I go, oh, that's Jane. She does this. Somebody else just became a CMMC. I can't remember what it's called, but it's like C3PO or something, right? They just became certified. It's in my head. And when people are looking to get CMMC certified or ask questions about that, I don't talk about that. I'm not an expert on that, even though I've even written a book on it, but I pass them to somebody like you who is an expert in there. So let us know who your core competencies or what your core competencies are. Last thing I want to say before we dive into the meat of today's session is as I'm going forward, do me a favor and engage in the chat. I'm going to ask you occasionally, put a couple of words into the chat. Let me know that you're tracking on what I'm saying. That's really helpful to me as a session host here and a trainer to make sure what I'm saying is reaching you and it's making sense. Okay, if you haven't been with me before, I move at a fire hose pace. Feel free to direct message me and go, what did you say? But really, this training is designed to move really fast on a particular topic and allow you to have a nugget or two that comes out of it. Every day we try to make you a little bit more prepared to succeed in the federal market. And that's my goal here when I do the training, and that's what I'm hoping you get. But I move at a really fast pace. I talk fast, so you have to slow me down later. You can't ever put me on 2-time repeat if you watch the replay. Okay, there's 2 main things I want to cover today. I always put way too much information and do too much preparation. Today, I just really want to focus on the challenge of using Shipley. And I'm using that as an example because it is a really strong example from my past experience as a small business owner. And even now, as I support small businesses, whether they're getting ready to graduate large or just beginning, these kind of questions come up. So I want to talk about the challenge with Shipley, why I'm doing this training. But it's not just Shipley, right? It's other tools that are designed for, in my opinion, billion-dollar companies. They're not designed for companies doing no revenue or under 20 million in revenue, things like that, right? So there's a certain stage for everything. That's one thing I want to talk about. And then the second thing I want to kind of anchor this session with the 7-step process. What should you be doing? How do you look at federal sales in particular as a process to move forward in the direction you want? So let's get started just with this whole idea of, the right tool for particular jobs. I'm just going to shrink my screen a little bit so I'm tracking on this. So one of the things, and I've got a lot of different top bullet points that remind me of what I want to talk about, but I want to see where my mind is going with this because I know exactly what I want to say, but there's threads on it. So the first thing, for example, is I used to run my company and I would use this phrase, I'm a billion-dollar company, revenue is not yet recognized. And when I said that, what it meant was I want to be Lockheed or I want to be Booz Allen, right? That big. We just haven't made our sales yet to recognize that revenue, to win those sales. And what I was insinuating and then kind of directing in my companies were that we wanted to use the tools they use. Why should we wait to get to their size to be as mature as an organization as they are? And what I didn't realize is by trying to be more mature than we were, and maturity is not, like my kids acting immature. It's just what stage is your company at? It's a maturity level, right? And so as I tried to be a billion-dollar company, revenue is not yet recognized, I would bring in tools like Shipley. And I remember this Shipley diagram is huge. I mean, it's bigger than the screen that I'm looking at, right? But it was huge and it was on our wall and all of us kept going to it, but we were nowhere near prepared for that. It was just so overwhelming in what it wanted, a lot of friction into our sales activities. And if you've heard me talk before, I don't like friction. Anything between where I'm at and where I want to go is friction, and you try to remove it. We talk about friction between where I'm at in our solution and where the customer is at and their needs. Anything in between that's delaying you from getting those two to meet is friction. And so when a small business like mine or yours is looking at a 96 process step Shipley diagram, and actually, let me just share it just in case you're not tracking on what I'm saying. If I come over here, I'm sharing Shipley, I think here. Here's an example of what I'm talking about. I'm just on Google and I pulled up this diagram, right? That huge thing, a lot of good information, a lot of good stuff. But in my opinion, it's built for a billion-dollar company. It's not built for a small business. And so we used to have this on our wall. And the reason I didn't like it then, and I didn't really know this, but I know this now. The reason I didn't like it is because we always felt like a failure. We were looking at all these things we're supposed to do. But how can you? You're not at that level. If you looked at today's invite, one of the bullets I had in there was, what's the point of color teams if everybody is in every color team? So we're doing black hat reviews. We're doing green. We're doing red. We're doing, yellow, white, and brown. So whatever. It's like, I feel like I'm in karate and I'm getting belts and little straps, but it's still just me and 3 other people doing it, right? Think about your company. How big is your company? Back office staff who's working on it. Are you the same person doing business development, capture, proposal writing, pricing, and then transitioning to customer satisfaction? Or are there just a few of you who are in every single meeting? Well, if you are, then to me, colored teams begins to just create friction between, if you just think about a proposal, an outline, a draft, done. It's like, you can call it what you want, but anything we put in there begins to make us feel like we have to do more. And I can equate Shipley. This is why I'm saying it's not about Shipley necessarily. It's about you and me as small business people taking on tools or maturity processes that are not designed for us. They're designed for bigger companies. And so when you look at that Shipley process, think about that process being used by and applied to people who are going after billion-dollar contracts, right? There's all sorts of billion-dollar contracts out there, hundreds of millions of dollars contract. Well, now you need this huge level of maturity that goes with that. And you need to be able to organize and bring all your different teams together. They actually have a graphics person. They actually have a marketing department, right? They actually have finance people who are doing the BOEs, the basis of estimates, right? And the pricing. And so they have all those people. They need that Shipley process to help them organize and get everybody talking to each other, everybody understanding where's the handoff going. So it's a great process, great tool at a certain point. But when you're below, let's say 20 million, 10 million for sure, then do you need that much? And I'm going to show you the process that I think you should be using as a small business making certainly less than 20, but less than 10. Everybody should be using this process I'm talking about. It's simplified. But I wanted to use another example that's like Shipley, but not that tool. Just think about accounting. And if you're a business developer, maybe you're not totally familiar with this, but all you small business owners will be. An accounting tool that we use when you start your business and you're not making money, Excel is perfect. That's all you need. Excel. You just need to track your stuff. And if you're lucky enough to talk to a CPA for $500 or $1,000 a year, one-time advice on setting up accounts, there's not a lot of information in there. It's a one-day task, really. And if it's not, you need to come ask those of us who can help you turn it into a one-day task. But a spreadsheet is more than enough for when you're making random number $500,000 and less, because most of that money is coming into the company and into your pocket. Right? You're coming in to make money so you can eat. Then you're going to hire somebody and make sure they can eat. So then you're going to get to a certain stage of maturity where you say, I'm going to go from Excel, great starter tool, and I'm going to go to QuickBooks. And from QuickBooks, that might last you all the way up to $20, $30 million firm. But then you're thinking about, hey, I want to go to the next level of maturity. I want to get DCAA compliant or DCAA audited or whatever. And then you move up to Deltek Cost Point, right? I'm not advocating any of these tools. I'm just saying these are 3 steps of maturity: Excel, QuickBooks, Deltek, Cost Point. And Deltek Cost Point is like, it and its pure software packages are the top of the line, right? It's more than enough for any company out there. But you don't need to start with Deltek. That's too advanced, too much stuff in there. You just need to come down. And so as you look at the tools, that's what I really want you to track on is, are we using tools? Are we forcing process into our company that is actually increasing friction and giving us all sorts of reasons on why we don't do what we need to do, which is sales, because we're too busy getting caught up in the administrative activity. So if you're following what I'm saying, if I'm making sense to you, do me a favor, put the right tool for the right time into the chat. Right tool for the right time. And as you do that, I want to kind of keep explaining some of the other little challenges you might run into with tools like Shipley that are designed for a more mature organization. I've heard people say you can take Shipley and use whatever you need to at the size you're at, but now it's making you do the job of determining the process. That's too much work for you, right? I'll tell you what the process is and you move forward. But part of the other problem, and I said this already, is this feeling of overwhelmed, right, with administrative activities. When you look at a tool like Shipley that lays out all the processes in a mature way, by its very nature, it is then telling you to do things in a certain way. An example is if you talk about a capture plan, and a capture plan becomes this PowerPoint deck. And in the PowerPoint deck, capture managers and BD people have to fill out all these slides and figure out how to report up and down. Well, now they're becoming a PowerPoint deck expert instead of a salesperson expert. They should be out, you should be out knocking on doors, talking to the customer, right? That's where sales are made. When you're in there having a conversation with the customer about their needs, their challenges, their goals, and aligning their thinking to your solution, your offering, so that when you write a proposal, it comes in. Anyways, the last thing that I just want to say on this, because I want to move on to the 7-step process that you can use, taking it from 96 to 7, is, as you move forward and you think about these tools that are out there and people talking about process, I want you to remember at any given point, if you feel overwhelmed with what you're doing, then maybe the process is not being done right, or you've got the wrong process in front of you. And I would encourage you to pause for a second and just look at what you're doing and saying, what is really needed in what the activities we're requiring of ourselves? Are we finding ourselves You've heard the term paralysis by analysis, doing too much time reading things. Are we getting paralysis by process? Is our process slowing us down? Is our process interfering with salespeople's mojo? I firmly believe in this whole idea of mojo. I'm a sales guy at my core, and I need to feel up to pick up the phone and call somebody. So the more administrative stuff I have to do, two things happen. I have an excuse not to make calls, or I begin to get depressed because I'm having to do that, right? Depressed in a soft way. But I begin to get demotivated for picking up the phone and calling people because I'm like, man, management's always asking for this. Look at your own processes and the things you're requiring of your team and say, are we putting too much administrative activity? Are we getting ourselves into a paralysis by process? Because the process is supposed to assist us to make sales, not actually slow us down. Okay, so let me, I'm going to switch over. I want to come to something you can do, and I'm going to share my screen for a second, and I'm going to talk off of this graphic. Hold on one second. So I'm going to talk off this graphic for the rest of this session, the rest of this training here. We got about 15 minutes, and I want to talk about, I said Shipley is a $1 billion tool, right? So I think it's a great tool, but I think it's a tool for maturity stage that's higher than most small businesses are at 20 million or even 10 million and below, right? And so here's a 7-step process that we put together that I say is all you need to be paying attention to move forward. So I'm going to reverse engineer it for a second. I love coming from the end, sales, and working my way back. And then I'm going to come forward with a couple of tips. But here's what I teach people who are trying to either become business developers, capture people within their organization. So brand new people, haven't done it before. In 90 days, we train them, and they're contributing business developers. They are solid junior people who can do the job on their own within 90 days. But I also use this to teach people who are experienced to say, hey, let's remind ourselves. I got 20 plus years experience doing this. I go back to the process. I go back and go, am I doing the right things? So it's just a good reminder. So let me start here with sales. And this is the way I like to explain it. If you want sales in the federal government space, you must submit proposals. Sounds pretty obvious, right? But what I say is you must submit winning proposals that are bound to win every single time, or the customer wishes they could award it to you, but there's more than one winning proposal submitted, right? Just because you submit a winning proposal doesn't mean your competitor didn't also do that. But so in order to win sales, you must submit winning proposals, and we'll come back to that in a little bit more. But in order to have winning proposals, you must have slam dunk opportunities in your pipeline. And what I mean by slam dunk opportunities is I mean opportunities that everybody in your company who looks at it goes, this is a slam dunk. That's a basketball reference, by the way, basketball slam dunk. Everybody in your company is looking at it saying, that's us. We should have slam dunk opportunity. That's a slam dunk opportunity for us. It's as if they wrote that work for us, the RFP, the PWS. That's a slam dunk opportunity. The way you know that you don't have slam dunk opportunities is if anybody in your company has to rationalize why it should be in your pipeline. By the way, if you understand what I'm saying as I'm going around and saying winning proposals, put that in the chat, or slam dunk opportunities. If these things resonate with you, put that in the chat. So slam dunk opportunities, maybe throw that in the chat if you understand the difference between that and an opportunity that you're rationalizing for why it's in your pipeline. So in order to find and to develop opportunities, so think about finding opportunities as business development, identifying opportunities to get into the pipeline, and shaping opportunities is the capture side. So kind of two threads there. But in order to do either of those, you must have relationships with teammates and with buyers that allow you to learn about opportunities, shape them, and to begin to win them by having a strong team. So in here, you want to have strategic relationships with your buyers, frankly, long before an opportunity is dropping. That's business development, is developing these strategic relationships. You also develop strategic relationships with teaming partners, larges and smalls, right? Strategic means you make a decision to do that. So put strategic relationships in there if you understand that strategic relationships lead to opportunities. So in order to develop strategic relationships, right, to build those up, you need to reach out to people. And so we call it outreach. Outreach is picking up the phone, calling people, having that first meeting that leads to a relationship starting and building, where you identify it as a strategic relationship. But it begins with basically having that first meeting, right, with people. First couple of meetings that shape the new relationship. And in order to do that, you must target the right people. I talk about targeting is identifying your primary agency that you want to go after, the Navy, for example, or EPA or Department of Energy. You choose one agency and then you go after it. If you're 10 million and below, no person should have more than one agency, but they should be responsible for developing that agency's relationships solidly. And the way they do that is they begin with creating a list, right? We're working with several customers. And one of the first things we do as they get ready to do outreach is give them a list of 100 or 200 people that sit in their sweet spot. For example, if you do DevSecOps, we've got this list of DevSecOps experts or in the customer space, in the program shops. We know who they are. We have their names and emails. Now it goes into outreach after that. But if you target the right people, if you know what your core competency is in your primary agency, targeting allows you to find, it really is as simple as the right people with their phone numbers and emails. And then the first step of the process, and as we move forward, is research. If I have a primary agency of Department of Energy or Navy, I want to research that organization. I have training on this, and you can go see where I talk about how to do research, but you want to look in there and be able to do so much research in like a 30-day period that you know more than 80% of the people who actually work for that agency. And it is not hard. You know, if you spend the time to become an expert at something, at some point, you'll just be reading more than the people who actually are in there. And you can watch my training to see what I mean by that. But when you do research, it allows you to understand the organization. It allows you to understand the challenges, needs at a high level, their strategic focus, their mission. And then it allows you to begin to understand their hierarchy of the offices, the program offices, how to begin to identify which offices are the ones you reach out to. Because when you do that, if we head back the other way again, going into targeting, your targeting begins from your research effort. So research is an input or leads to your targeting activity. First, you want to understand the agency. Then you want to find the right people in that agency based on your research. I know that I want to go into the Navy, into PEO Digital, which is a program executive office that does a lot with DevSecOps or digital transformation. That shop does a lot of that, and I want to go in there. And so targeting starts pushing into that. So when you have this process of researching, targeting, outreach, you're able to understand the agency and begin to get in the door. You're able to understand your potential teaming partners, because you would do the same thing with teaming partners. I might want to get into Booz Allen, or I might want to get into Bain Group, which is a small business. Well, I still research them. What do they do? Oh, look, here's some case studies they talk about. Here's some of their services they put on their website. I got it. I understand it. Now, who can I talk to? Well, at a small business level, I'm trying to talk to the owner, certainly any of the business development people I can find. At a larger company like Booz Allen, I might look for people who are serving the Navy, maybe even serving in capacities of business development or capture, so I can start with them. They might be most likely to welcome me coming in and trying to add something to their team as they go serve the Navy even more. But so you can do this with a small and large business just the same as you can an agency. Research them, identify who to call, and then you reach out to them with an introduction meeting. You're trying to develop a strategic relationship, right? I said, put this in the chat. You're developing these strategic relationships. There's a whole training I have just on strategic relationships that talk about how these people can help you and you can help them grow within the federal market. And then those lead to opportunities, proposals, and sales, like I said. So let me pause for 1 second. First off, if this is making sense of how you can follow a 7-step process over and over again for business development and capture to move from not knowing anything to sales, if it's making sense from a high level, put 7-step process into the chat. And by the way, if you want this handout, just put 7-step process handout, please, into the chat, and I'll be happy to get that to you. We actually have a lot of handouts we'll be passing out and making available to you. I love these things because you put them up on a wall and just track on them. Let me go ahead and stop here because I'm getting close to my time. One of the things I wanted to kind of wrap up with here is that, and I'm sorry I left this caption on, I forgot that guy. One of the things I wanted to wrap up with here is the this idea that what I'm showing you is the 20%. If we go back to Shipley, and again, I like Shipley for a certain stage of a company, right? If you're 50 million and beyond, yes, that's perfect. And there's people in this community, people I call friends, who are Shipley experts. But I don't think Shipley is right for people at a lower level when you're just getting started. And so what we try to do is to take the 7-step process is, maybe you can look at it this way, saying the 20% that you need to do that will deliver 80% of the results. If you've ever heard the 80-20 rule, where it talks about 80% of your results will come from 20% of your efforts, 80% of your headaches will come from 20% of your employees or your customers, 80% of your successes will come from 20% of your strategic partners. There's this 80-20 rule. And what we try to do is to say, well, what's the 20% you could do, 20% effort you could do that would deliver 80% of the results? And if you think about capture and business development, that really comes down to the 7-step process. I'm going to do research on the agency that I want to get into, or the teaming partners I want to build strategic relationships with. I'm then going to target the people I want to call. So I build a list of 100 or 200 people to begin to get into a routine in step 3, which is outreach, calling these people, doing initial meetings, doing initial introductions, understanding them and having them understand us, and then moving forward into relationships. These relationships, when properly developed, will lead to opportunities that fit into our pipeline. And when we focus, it's not just random opportunities, but it's slam dunk opportunities. These are opportunities that theoretically were written for your company, right? You should be winning them. And when you have slam dunk opportunities in your pipeline, you will write winning proposals. I coined this term, winning proposal score. It's this way of measuring up to 100 points, all the things you need to do to give yourself a 100% score that you're writing a winning proposal, right? And when you write winning proposals, you will win. It is as simple as that. Sales is really that simple. If we're not winning, and you can watch another training, then you can look at each one of those process steps and say, am I writing winning proposals? Am I writing enough winning proposals? Do we have slam dunk opportunities? Are we having opportunities that we're more bronze and silver participants instead of gold, right? The slam dunk is we win every time kind of thing. Look back in the process. When you have a process like this, it's not that hard to look at the process pretty quickly and go, why are we not winning? I've worked with people where they're not winning the way they want, and they think it's because of something to do with proposals or their opportunities. But when you really go back, it's because they don't have any strategic relationships. They really don't have any relationships. They know people, they have names and numbers, but they haven't built up relationships. A regular meeting is when you know that you have a relationship. You're maintaining a strategic relationship. You're meeting on purpose to talk about the customer needs, or you're meeting on purpose to talk about a joint pipeline type approach or something. But this customer, I was able to say, look, you're not proposal problems. You don't have problems in proposals, don't have problems in opportunities. It's really here in relationships. If you just take the time to build relationships, you're doing pretty well on opportunities and proposals. You'll be able to have more traction. You'll be able to do more activity and win more sales or see more sales. So a lot of information there, going at this at a high approach. But as you go forward, I just want you to understand, when you think about the process tools you might be putting in place, whether it's Deltek, CostPoint, or Shipley, remove the friction from you and your customer. And if you're putting too much administrative activity in there, you're increasing, I believe, the friction between you and your salespeople and the customer that you're trying to reach. So go ahead and remove that friction. Try to have process tools that fit for your need at the size, the organizational maturity that you're at. Hope you found it valuable. If you did, do me a favor, throw thanks into the chat. I want you to remember, government contracting, it is not a secret. It's just a process. Part of the process is coming back. I hope you come back next week. We'll have 5 more lives for you.